Welcome to the Heatcast. Hot takes, burning questions, and the blazing minds behind the stories. Your host, James Heat, part author, part troublemaker, breaking the rules and building worlds. Alongside James is his co-host, Robert C. Murray. Just call him Rob. He's one of the best science fiction authors / podcasters you've never heard of. The Heatcast, where the stories are sharp and the authors are sharper.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody. James, this is pretty exciting that we're doing this new project together. I know you've done 100%. Some YouTube stuff that's not related to what we're talking about, and I've done a couple of different podcasts that have had dozens of listeners. But I'm excited. You and I joining forces, we're going to have a huge audience, and because we're going to talk about good stuff on here, and we're going to get to know each other.
And have fun. A lot of fun.
Oh, most importantly, have fun.
Exactly. Yeah, well, basically, as I'm sure the listeners will work out, I'm the host, and I'm James Heat, and you are the co-host, and you are Robert C. Murray, and
yes.
From this, we will be we've only named ourselves these things, not the names, but the structure, just so that we could keep some structure to the show. But basically, for the audience and the listeners, we are not in any way really structured, and it's going to fall apart within minutes. But we thought we'd do that just so that we'd have something tangible to kick off from. Would you agree with that?
100%. I say come for the hook, for the content. Stick around for you and me not only getting to know each other, but watching this thing fly gloriously off the rails and then watching us pull it back together again.
Straight into the sun, but we'll land in the water somewhere. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, well, for the listeners, do you want to explain who you are in a couple of sentences just to give them a little bite-sized bit of information?
Sure. So, officially, my full government name is Robert C. Murray. Everyone that knows me just calls me Rob. I am an author of science fiction stories mostly, who has a day job that I don't care to talk about because while it pays the bills, it's incredibly dull.
Yeah.
I am based in the States, and I will even say the state of Maryland, because I'm just that proud of my state and the flag. There are many people on the internet that consider it a cult, and I'm fine with that.
Hey, a cult's a bit of fun. It's all good. Yes, cool. So you said there that you write science fiction, yeah? What what brought you to that? Was it something that did you trial other things, or was it just a passion that you've sort of went with?
So, really, it's been a lifelong love affair with the genre. I started out, it's one of the first things I was really drawn to when I started to read when I was a little kid, and Mom started taking me to the library.
Yeah.
You know, her, me, my little sister, it was a thing to do in the summertime when we didn't have school, and I would invariably take out books. One of the happiest days of my life was when I was able to go into the grown-up section and load up on adult grown-up science fiction. I won't say adult.
I remember,
else.
I remember that same exact moment happening to me. So yeah, that's a blast from the past.
Yeah, so it's been that just, you know, I've been steeped in it. Probably seeing the original Star Trek on TV as a little kid is probably what flipped that switch.
Yeah.
Early on, and I have written other stuff. I have a bunch of poetry out there actually, and only a couple of those poems are even loosely science fiction based. But I will write more, but most of my writing time is consumed with, and has been for years, consumed with science fiction.
Yeah, no, I get that. You saying that, it's funny because I think a lot of people started with the Treks, like whether it was Star Trek or Next Generation or whichever one they did, that sort of took so many people, like that imagination, that total like different world, and that I think took a lot of like the young minds off into the sci-fi sort of genre, because you know, as I'm sure you know, that I love sci-fi as well. So yeah, I think mine came from somewhere around that. But like, you have written quite a bit, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was the Titan Run trilogy.
Yes.
Do you know what? I would like you to first off tell me where the idea for this came from, this world, and then we'll do a bit more of a deep dive into why I asked it like that first.
when I first had the idea, the show The Deadliest Catch was a hot property on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely over here in the States. No idea if you seem familiar with it, so good.
Yeah.
And I just had an idea about what if The Deadliest Catch happened in space. And and as happens with all of our works, I still have the original notes that I scribbled down in a folder somewhere. If I were to go back, I'm looking right at where they probably are actually. I could and see how much things have changed. The core story always stayed the same, but obviously the details mutated as the story took shape. Because even and we'll talk about my process in a little bit. But as I work through my process, even when I have everything planned out, sometimes, and you know how it is, you're in the middle of writing a chapter and your characters take a left turn on you and you have no choice but to follow.
Yeah, they've taken control of the situation, and now you've got to go, all right, well, I had a really good story this way, but all right, we'll see where this goes. Done it a lot of times.
Why did you say that? Yeah, why did you say that character? So I took that, and one of the centerpieces of the centerpiece of the Titan Run trilogy is really a relationship. It's a marriage that falls on hard times. And it's between two men. And back when I first had this idea, like I said, it's when Deadliest Catch was big, so it's mid to late aughts. And when the idea first struck me, but it took me several years to get the story to publication, to get it out there. And there wasn't, I hadn't seen, and I'm not as widely read as some are, but I read a fair amount. And there wasn't much of that representation in what I considered mainstream science fiction.
No, agreed.
At the time, because we didn't get our first gay couple really in Star Trek until Discovery premiered in 2017, a year after I published the first novel. I'm not saying anything one way or the other.
No, they were copying you,
right. But so their relationship as two people in love who are married, and gay marriage wasn't even legal in all 50 United States when I wrote this either. So it was normalizing something that should have been and is now normal, as much as telling just a damn good science fiction adventure story.
Absolutely.
It was a way for me to talk about how I think the world should look and should operate.
Were you worried about because when you sort of you do a genre like that where it's something that everyone they're already in their own bubble of what they accept in sci-fi. We've got a lot of different subgenres of sci-fi, and if you write something, some people will be angry about it, some people won't. When you add something that in those days was sort of frowned upon by people, and were you worried that, no pun intended, to alienate certain people, or were you sort of excited by that prospect of being able to get that out there?
If I have been able to change one mind in the process of putting these books out into the world, then that's a victory. I would love to say, all of us authors would love to say that, I'm writing to change the world, my words will be, and there are much more persuasive and powerful authors out there who do a much better job of writing argumentative texts. I'm there to tell a story but through example show I kind of knew that it might be a little self-limiting to have a gay couple be front and center in this story, but they're also just great characters, I think. And
that's the important thing.
Right. They're good characters, their story is compelling. And honestly, the feedback that I have received over the years has always been positive. I've honestly, whether it's just because I'm still that obscure, best science fiction author you've never heard of, or as I would prefer to think, I'm just that good at writing it that people don't notice. But I haven't received any hate or anything like that from it. Yeah, that's not to say it won't come. No, that it couldn't come, but it did cross my mind, but I wasn't worried about it. It didn't stop me from telling the story that I wanted to tell.
The thing is, even if you are going to get hate at some point, you've put it out there anyway, and that means someone's looked at it. Often the hate will come from people who haven't read it. They'll have just heard a tiny snippet and then made their whole mind up. So As you sort of said before, I've got a YouTube channel. It's completely unrelated, but you'll be surprised what people get their back up on. That you think to yourself, there's no way someone can get angry about this. Oh, and you're wrong. So I think if they're going to get angry about something that you've thought's important, it's the best reason for them to get angry, and to be honest, take them as victories. Yeah, you will always get hate in everything you do. It's just nice that at the moment nothing has come of it, but with such a broad sort of spectrum of an idea, the entire universe, one question I had was, how many other novels have you got based in this universe? Are you going to have many more? And if so, is there a finite number or an infinite number? Has the universe become bigger than the original story?
It definitely has. And I have, so there's a 9-part series I'm in the middle of writing right now. And the first two parts are out there. They are a 20-year later somewhat continuation of you re-meet several characters from the Titan Run trilogy. That's awesome. And thank you. And there are several new characters, and I really more focus on the newer characters. I'll compare it favorably to the Star Wars sequels, where the old characters are there, but in more of a supporting role, and we meet new characters who carry the story forward. The old characters have something to do.
Of all new.
Right, exactly. And it's also been 20 years, in universe for these characters in this series. So there's 9 stories to be told, or one overarching story across 9 parts with 9 individual tales, making that up. But honestly, I have dozens of different novel ideas at various stages of being fleshed out, that not all of them originally were going to take place in this universe, but the universe itself has kind of, the rules and the economics of it and everything have formed in my head and continue to form and evolve in my head. And I have written a brief history of the universe from, say, about our present day now until when everything starts. So eventually I plan on fleshing that out into maybe some material for folks who maybe to join my mailing list or something down the road. I haven't really decided what to do with that content yet, but it exists in rough draft form.
So that there is a bit more of a the history of and the background and the economics and the politics of the world and why of the universe.
Yes,
I love that. I think that as soon as the right people start hearing about it and it starts to pick up and they all start, then that will be such a nice bonus material that they can get their teeth into. And then if you've written any accidental problems in the universe, you can write them away with this bit of text and say, no, this wasn't a mistake. This is because of this. Perfect.
Right. It's a world with growing pains. It's a world in change or going through change as humanity expands out into the broader sphere.
Yeah. No, I really like the idea. Would you think of either going and doing something completely different, completely leave that universe and that thing alone, or do you feel like you're stuck there for a bit? And maybe that's where you stay, kind of thing. Because I know that sometimes when you've got this beautiful world, this beautiful universe, there's a lot holding you there because you've got your friends there, you've got what it's like there, So it's very easy to go, oh, that's a good idea. Now that would be perfect here. So are you finding that you would like to stay there for much longer, or do you get the occasional need to dip your toe somewhere else?
I'll be honest, if I get that wandering eye for my stories, that usually gets scratched by writing a poem.
Yeah. Okay.
If that pops in, that stuff, because years ago, and it's out there, I wrote a novel that's not science fiction. So it exists, it's on Amazon, you can find it. I haven't gone back to read it in years. I'm sure it's perfectly okay. Almost nobody has read it. But that's okay. So I could maybe, if the right story came along, like anyone would say, if the right story presented itself, if it was something that just didn't make sense to happen, like sentient robots, don't really exist in this universe per se. There's AI that exists. There's robotic stuff,
Yeah.
in there, but I haven't really written. No one has real, like, fully functioning robot butlers. They're not super common. They're curiosities, if anything, in this current universe. So if I wanted to write something from that regard, I would make it maybe something separate, or I would have to set it, in the same universe in the far future. But if the right story came
Yeah.
along that didn't work in the universe and it was something that I knew I had to write, yeah, I'd step aside from it. But the nice thing about this universe that it's kind of been created in my head is that it is fairly accepting of a wide range of
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so you wouldn't limit yourself if something came along and you had to write it, but you're happy where you're at the moment. I get that
Mm-hmm.
totally. So, what or how did you first start creating this universe? As in, what made it pop for you that made it such a sort of an expansive thing? Because when I have an idea about a certain thing, I sort of get a world sort of, or just the area done. But you've gone, do you know what? I'll just do an entire universe. Why not? Whereas I struggle with that. What does the street look like? So
Mm-hmm.
where did that come from? How did you sort of develop that into something so big and magical kind of thing?
I mean, honestly, when it originally started, it was just going to be these three books, that the Titan Run trilogy, and then I was
Mm-hmm.
going to move on. I was going to write other science fiction with different characters and different takes on our world. But then I realized how much I liked the world I had created, and I fleshed out certain pockets of it, but certainly not the whole thing. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of room left to discover, and it's nice to be able to return to corners that I've previously fleshed out, that I've you know
Yeah.
that I've done all the descriptions for, and decided what things need to look like, and maybe coming, like, in these newer books, coming back to a place 20 years later and talking about what's changed, what looks different now versus the last time all of us visited it, that was 20 some years ago. Something that I think about is a fair amount is Kim Stanley Robinson, or like Stan as his friends know him. He's not my friend, so I'll call him KSR. I've read a lot of his books, not as much of his climate fiction,
Mm-hmm.
just simply because I haven't chosen to dive into that, but most of his space stuff, his early
Mm-hmm.
stuff like Memory of Whiteness, of course, the Mars trilogy, um, and 2312 and some other things. And what's interesting to me is that you see, while the details change, there's a lot of stuff that stays the same
Mm-hmm.
from one book to the next. A
Yeah.
lot of his, so he's thinking of, kind of, it's not the same universe, and he'll even tell you it's not the same universe. I think, but he's drawing from the same, deep well of source material, alternate
Yeah.
realities of the same, that are close together
Yeah. Yeah.
in the same universe. And I just, because he's definitely one of my inspirations in all of this, and so I just decided, squish it all into one universe. It's a great playground. It's a nice sandbox. All the pieces are where I want them to be. I just pick them up, make them do things, and then we all move on.
Mm-hmm. With the 20 years later, did you find it enjoyable to think like the logics of that time passing and what does change in our world? Did you find it sort of cathartic and enjoyable to see certain things age and decay, whereas other things lasted and so on? Did you find that fun and enjoyable to do as much as creating them, or did you find it less or more so? Do you know what I'm saying?
I liked doing it. I liked being able to write the change. I liked being able to show that, I'm not going to give too much away, but that some
No.
characters, had grown together and been together, and continued to build their lives, or and what had happened to other characters where they were. It was very nice to show that there were, thinking from a setting perspective, there were some details, or a new technology that
Mm-hmm.
I invented for. It's a pretty common sci-fi tech, but in the first in the Titan Run trilogy, it's an experimental technology that's just out there. That
Yeah.
is a nice little MacGuffin that helps with some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was able to more broadly incorporate that into the universe, since it all mostly pretty much takes place on spaceships.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes just status quo. You see echoes of the past that came before this technology still out there, but it makes storytelling easier because there's less with this tech. There's less I have to think about when I'm writing people on spaceships doing things.
Yeah.
So it was nice to be able to pepper that throughout. Whereas if I go, and there's other stuff that's going to take place back in that past, as I move back and forth along my timeline.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to remember that this technology wasn't everywhere. Things happen differently. The math that I do and the settings that I create have to function a certain way.
Yeah. With that, I've got two questions based on that. Number one, do you have any naming convention for your ships by any chance?
I do. Not so much in the original trilogy itself. That I just kind of went with names that I thought sounded neat. There's a little symbolism in the names there, but it's a little vague, more vague, but it's there. But I decided with this new series that all the official ships, because there's like a Space Coast Guard that exists in there. It's not really Starfleet because that would get me sued, but it's inspired by.
Nothing like, yes.
Nothing, yeah. But only inside the Earth solar system, because star to star transit doesn't exist yet in my universe. I'm thinking about it, but all the stories take place in our solar system in the future, so it's the Space Coast Guard basically. But all of the ships are named after famous women. It's largely an exploratory as much as it is a civil defense and search and rescue organization. So those vessels, the ones that are certainly warships, are named after women warriors of Earth's past from around the globe. Famous woman scientists make up the bulk of the name of the fleet.
I love that idea, but where did that come from? What made you think that that's going to be? Because as you know, we as men often name our cars female names, but generally their names are, especially in space, like in sci-fi, it tends to be the something scariness fleet. Where did the female warriors? Now that's as scary as it can be, in my opinion. I'm married, so I know how terrifying that can be. So where did that idea come from?
So I think it goes back to a joke that I heard about the time I was going to be naming this last ship, and it's what did Watson and Crick discover? Rosalind Franklin's notes. Because as we all know, Rosalind Franklin did a lot of work, and at the end of the trilogy, the original trilogy, a new ship comes along, and it is named the Rosalind Franklin in her honor.
Yeah.
Because I think she was having a little bit of a. When I first wrote this draft, it would have been 2020 or so, or 2021, somewhere in there when I had the idea for it. So obviously, that joke's much older than that, but it came to my notice, around that time. And I just, that's who, and then that sparked the whole thing. And then I realized, well, this isn't going to be a one-off, because this is cool, first of all, because not only does it, maybe there's a scientist that no one's heard of, or a warrior or something. I also get the opportunity to go do some research and learn something, because, thanks to my own education, I only know about so many, famous women or women who have been important to history. So I get to go and look it up, and confirm spellings and all that great stuff. So, that was kind of the inspiration, and then the through line for the whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's brilliant. It's something that hasn't been done, so again, you've crossed another barrier that doesn't normally get even a thought. So, I do like that. Because you're naming it after famous women and they're very accomplished people, did that give you a favourite ship, or did you name a favourite ship after a specific person?
Not as such. I will say the Rosalind Franklin, because it was the first of that type, is kind of my favorite, just because it was the first ship of that naming convention. Yeah. So, and this doesn't spoil too much because it's not really something that would be spoiled, but she shows up in the second book of the new series that I'm working on, and plays a fairly prominent role in the second book. I won't say what happens after that, but she's there because it's out now. So if you haven't read it, everybody, you should go read it.
All the links will be wherever you're watching this now. We'll have links for all of this in the descriptions or wherever. Don't worry, you can get your hands on all of this, I promise.
Yeah, so it was nice to kind of, because honestly, at the end of the third book of the trilogy, I introduced the Rosalind Franklin. I set up the mission, but it was the end of that story. So it was basically um, almost the end of Star Trek 4 when they get the Enterprise A for folks that know their Star Trek, and everyone's seen the one with the whales. So at the very end when it was a little bit beyond that. You get a scene or two, I think, in the new ship, but you don't, so it was great to be able to actually spend some time with her, after, this is the ship that goes from being brand spanking new to now a 20-year-old ship
Yeah.
that's having some work done, having her tires rotated and the oil changed.
Do you, because you know you're going to be writing many more, do you try and finish with a little cliffhanger or a little nudge towards something that may happen? How do you go from the end of one book and to the beginning of the next? Do you have a little cheeky, oh, you better come back because something's about to happen?
So for this series, at least, because this is the first series that I wrote, the trilogy, yes, the first two installments of the trilogy both ended with with the story unresolved, the main story. So you had to keep reading to get the whole story. With this, I'm telling a large story across the 9 smaller ebooks. The ultimate goal is to then gather them into 3 physical books. So that where you get parts 1, 2, and 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9 will each kind of tell one part of the story, and there's going to be a time jump in between each 3. So 1, 2, and 3 tell one story across, a couple of months at most, I think. And then the second 4, 5, 6. I'm writing 4 right now. I'm working on that one. As we speak, but as we speak, I'm drafting part 4, and so 4, 5, and 6 have a little bit more time to play out just because of the story I'm telling. Then there will be another little time jump, and then you'll get 7, 8, 9 will play out and tell a story. So there will be most of the plot threads are wrapped up in the third of each set.
Yeah, I get you.
Of the installment. So it's kind of hey, if you want to see what happens next to these people after part 3, come back to part 4, which will be out in September of 2026.
No plug there.
Right, but it's not as tight a cliffhanger as some series that I have read and really enjoyed. There are some sci-fi series out there that I get to the end and I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean there's no resolution here? I have to go buy the next. Okay, and I go right out, hop right online and buy the next copy of next ebook so I can keep reading the story that's happening. And there's a little bit more closure here at the end of part 3, but to the thing to the words to the reader from me are basically, hey, the story's not done. Part 4 is, here it is to pick up the story and run with it, a little down the line, based on what happened in these 3 books. You get to see how the world has changed by these events. And this series also, as befits a 9-part series, is much broader in scope and bigger in scale. The Titan Run trilogy was a fairly intimate tale. There are 2 spaceships involved. It's like I said, it centers around it's an ensemble cast, but it centers around these 2 main characters and what they go through. But it tells a fairly intimate tale across the 3 books. But this 9-part kind of sweeps across the entire solar system and has much larger stakes.
You've gone from this tiny little eggshell of an idea, and now you've exploded out to all corners of your universe. I love that. I think that's brilliant. Okay, now here's a good one. If you were to only be able to talk about, let's say we started the podcast, and I said to you, you can only talk about one book. That's it. I don't want to hear anything about any other books. Which one would you have chosen out of all of the stuff you've written, and why would you have done that?
I'm going to say the second book of the Titan Run trilogy. It's called Kraken and Phoenix, which is the name of the 2 ships in the trilogy. And I think I just love the story that got told in there. I like where I went with things. I feel the best about that. The vibes are great about that book because the first book is getting everything started. It's setting everyone on their journey. It's the call to action for everybody. It's meeting everyone. It gets things going, but it accomplishes putting everybody in place to go on. Part two, Kraken and Phoenix, that's the bulk of the adventure. The third part tells the rest of the story. It's necessary and it's good writing. I think, and those that have reviewed it tend to agree. People that have read it say, but my heart is in that second book.
Yeah, I get that. What I was going to say was the first book sort of established everything. The second book was where you got to have all of your fun and continue doing what you're doing. And then the third book was necessary to finish it. But yeah, I totally understand that. I get that completely. With that one then, when you first had the ideas for it, how much did it evolve from the initial idea that, your notes? Did you write pretty much what you had written down originally, or did it evolve out of control and change completely from what you'd first thought?
The original idea was just to write one book, honestly. It was just going to be called The Titan Run. That was the original title. One book, done. But then I realized the story I'm telling really is going to take more room to tell the tale. So that I found the break points in the story, split it into 3 novels, and blew it up from there. Because I also knew I was going to need more. The story was bigger, but at the same time, I needed to make sure to also fill in more and more detail. So it grew bigger, and definitely, like I said earlier, it definitely mutated in the writing. But I think if I were to go back and look at my initial pencil scribblings, on my lunch break at work, to what's in the finished published books, it's recognizable. Some of the names have shifted. The details are obviously different, but it's the same story.
Yeah, I get you. When writing specifically out of this world kind of stuff, I personally find it can be quite challenging to not just make it a sonic gun or a sonic taxi or a whatever, where you just try and long spacey word, normal word. And because of that, I sometimes find that I struggle with a certain scene. But it tends to, the ones I struggle with tend to be the ones I enjoy the most in the end. What, if any, scenes have you struggled with the most, and did they turn out to be ones that you then look back on and say, the struggle was worth it, I really like that?
Honestly, I like to show my characters doing the everyday, and I don't like to skip some of the. Not every chapter starts with a character brushing their teeth and getting ready for their day, but some of them do, and showing the personal moments of a character as a method of showing their inner life and giving them a moment to breathe and think, as metaphorical crap for what they're going through in the larger plot. But those can also be the hardest. Honestly, the book I'm writing right now is probably the hardest one I've written, because I write a lot of dialogue. Dialogue comes very easy to me. 2 characters taking up space in my head, firing off stuff back and forth. Easy peasy. There is much less dialogue in this current book that I'm writing than there's been in any of my previous books, because she spends so much time, the main character of this book, alone, doing her thing, or she's going through her day, going through her life, going on her mission. It's one of the characters that we meet in parts 1 through in part 2. We meet her, and she became one of the main characters and is going to continue to be the main character throughout the rest of the series. But she's dealing with some stuff. She is the main character of this book, and she is dealing with fallout of parts 1 through 3 of the consequences of what happened is what she's working through. So that's the hardest thing, because from a technical writing perspective, I have to not get too repetitive or I have to make sure that what I'm saying makes sense for the story and isn't just wasting everybody's time. And I'm not just filling pages to fill pages.
Yeah.
But it's also, as a writer, it's tricky to, constantly just write someone's internal monologue and keep that fresh and not have her bouncing off of someone else. That's
Yeah.
what I find to be challenging. I feel like I'm rising to the challenge, but I really come to cherish when she does interact with someone and I get to write some dialogue. I hate typing dialogue. I like writing dialogue.
It's funny. For the first two books I wrote, struggled with dialogue, and I felt like it was going on too long. I felt like, oh, come on, hurry up and shut up, stop talking now. And then when I read it back, it was like they sort of had a huge moment where the world was ending, kind of thing. They went, oh, that's all right. Anyway, let's go get tea, and then left it. So I realised that I needed to do more dialogue. I felt like it was longer than it was, kind of thing. But I still struggle with that, and it's something obviously you've tackled and you can do. And I find that the day-to-day stuff for me is the hardest. So I tried to write a romance, and I couldn't do it because it was the same stuff every day. Whereas they couldn't get shot down by laser beams and stuff, they had to be normal, and I struggled beyond belief with that. So it's what I'm trying to figure out and do better with, but not necessarily winning yet. But I'm trying, it's getting there. When you write, and I'm sure that in your books you've had moments of sadness and grief and upset and heartache and that kind of thing, do you ever find yourself getting upset because of what you've written? Because I've read a couple of good books where I've, being a man, I've just gone, cool, if I was a woman I'd have cried at that, but I'm a man so I won't. Okay, so I've had a couple of tears every now and again. It's a really good book. It hits you right, and you get a bit upset. Have you ever written something that has done that to yourself?
The first novel I wrote, the one I obliquely mentioned earlier, that was not a science fiction novel. There was a scene that I had to write that, and I don't want to give it away because people might actually read the damn thing. There was a scene that I wrote around. Yeah, I wrote around and around and around it, and even when I was in the scene, I kept writing more and more and pushing off what needed to happen. And anybody that reads the book will, well, there's one of two they think it could be, but there's just one scene that just really broke my heart as I was writing it. Yeah. But it had to happen for the story that I had decided I was telling. So there was that in this stuff. Now I know that I've written stuff that has brought people to tears, especially in this current series. Me personally, no, because I know what's coming. I know what I'm doing to people. I don't not feel the emotion, but at the same time, it doesn't break me, not yet anyway. I have definitely been broken by stuff that I've read. Like, I'm not a machine.
No.
but yeah, nothing that I've read has made me personally kind of happy. Other than that one scene, I think I may have walked away from it from a day or two after writing that years and years and years ago. I was much younger and less experienced in life then.
Yeah.
So I have not written anything so devastating that, but I still get choked up at the end of Star Trek 2, and I know what's coming. So
it's funny because I've written lots of sad scenes, and I've had one of my main characters die without me realizing I was not going. They weren't going to die, and then they had to. Or it had to happen, and I felt some loss and regret that I had to kill them off, but it wouldn't have worked if I hadn't. So I was like, okay, they have to die out. That's I've got no choice. So they did. But there was two lines particular in one of my books. I won't go into it, and we may go over this when we do the swap around, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, at the end. But there was two lines she said, this character, that I went, oh God, that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I didn't think about it. I was just writing it, and when I then read it back, it sort of hit me emotionally. And they're just very innocent, and they're things we take for granted kind of thing, but there's poor character doesn't have things that we have. And so, yeah, it was just like, it's the same as, when a character goes mummy and they're a sort of adult or whatever, it had that effect kind of thing. But, okay, so one thing I'd always like to know is, where does the initial ideas come from? Like you said originally that it was from Deadliest Catch, but as in, like, now you've written more and more, do you, for example, with me, I'll be scrolling on some stupid website and something will be said and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And then I'll just go off on one, and that's maybe 2 months of my life gone just because I was watching a 30-second clip of something rubbish. Do you get the same places, or where do your ideas sort of manufacture and percolate?
Definitely that. There are definitely ideas that come from seeing something, and the twist appears in my head, and I have to get it down, or an idea pops into my head. And it's because my brain's been in the background mishmashing together all of the science fiction I've read and watched over the years. Yeah. I think of a story that happened on a show or a movie or something a certain way. I think, well, what if it was instead this? What's my take on that trope of story? Sometimes I'm convinced it's cosmic rays that get through the atmosphere and bonk my brain in just the right way.
Yeah.
Because some of the weird ideas that I've come up with over the years that I don't know where they ever came from, but there they are, and I they're there for future use. But yeah, it's a hodgepodge of inspirational sources.
Yeah, no, same for me. In the shower, go into the toilet. They just that's a great idea. I did once, just recently, wake up in the middle of the night and go, that is the greatest story ever. And I was like, normally I'd get out of bed and I'd write it down. It was like, oh my God. And I was like, no, that was so good. I won't need to write that down. I've got that locked in, the greatest thing. Woke up in the morning and went, oh my God, last night I had the greatest story of my life. Couldn't remember a single word. So that was that. So I do always write them down now. And I hate myself for not. But,
that's happened to me more than once.
Yeah, have a pen and paper by the bed, write it down. If you get the ideas, then make sure you got pen and paper. You will love yourself in a week or so when you've got nothing to write and you go through it and go, actually, not a bad idea. There'll be 40% of them absolutely unintelligible garbage, but there'll be one or two beautiful bits in there,
Definitely.
I tend to write loads of stuff. I bounce from manuscript to manuscript. Do you work on just one thing, or do you have multiples? I know you said about poetry, and I always have a little bit of poetry being written at any one time, but I mean big stories, or not just big stories, but, do you have multiple manuscripts that you're working on, or do you tend to just work on one?
My project bouncing is not from writing project to writing project. I have one writing project at a time that's actively drafting something. Now, what I will do is I might go work on a cover design, or I might pull up and work on some marketing collateral. If I'm feeling graphic, I may fire up, because I use GarageBand because I'm only so advanced when it comes to music production, and I'll be feeling musical, and I'll plunk out, a piece of music because I had an idea about that, and I'll spend an hour or two one day, and that'll be how I scratch that itch. I paint. Behind me, you might be able to see dimly a bunch of my painting work that I will not be bringing closer, but it is on my socials. Yeah, they're all, most of that stuff's on my socials. So I paint sometimes too if I'm feeling a certain kind of fidgety. So I bounce between types of art.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one writing project at a time that I tend to focus on. And now, that said, I have long planned to put out kind of what I could think of an omnibus poetry collection that kind of edits out some of the lesser works of my first 3 books, and also includes a lot of stuff that was on the poetry podcast that I did, that it's never been properly in print before. So that exists as a rough manuscript, and I haven't gone back to it recently, but every now and then I'll open up the Word document and I'll tidy it up and I'll do some formatting work. But or or I'll get when I get one of those ideas for a new novel. I use my note-taking app. I'll create a
Yeah.
new page, and I'll start just typing stream of consciousness what I think should be. What's the setting, what's the plot, what's happening, who are the characters that are going to inhabit this corner of the world, what are they doing, etc. And I get to a point where it just kind of starts to peter out, and then the rest of the story happens. Is what I usually something like that.
Yeah.
To be decided later.
Yeah.
That's out of my brain, and then I'm back to working on the book, and especially with this series, because I set deadlines for myself.
Yeah.
Because I want to set a regular release schedule, because I want to build on the readership that I have and find new readers, because
Yeah.
I know that like we're not alone as science fiction readers. There's again, there's dozens of us
If
out
not
there,
20.
if not 20. So I want to provide a kind of a regular beat of
Yeah.
releases, so that people come to know what to expect, and then I'll have built that muscle.
Yeah.
By the time the series is done, then I'm not worried about a series. I can just write a book and release the book.
Yeah.
Write the next book, release the next book, and then and have that and they all take place in that same universe, so it provides a modicum, an easy on ramp for a new reader to come in. They can pick up, if they pick up in the middle of the series, well, that's kind of on them.
Yeah.
But if they pick up one of the other random books or whatever, it's not a huge learning curve for them to stay in the universe if they like what I've written and read everything else.
And also it's good for the people that have read, because they've got that comfort of that same universe. Yes. That they can come in and they already know the laws, they already know the rules, so they can come in from a point of already having this knowledge. So it works for everyone in a roundabout way. So do you find, once you've written a book, because I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but once I've written a book, I'm like, oh, thank goodness me, it's out of my head. And it feels like a weight's off my shoulder. I didn't know it was there. And like the New Dawn of Aegis that I wrote that in 30 days. And after, I didn't know I had it in my head. And then after I wrote it, I went, oh, brilliant. And it just felt like, it wasn't a negative feeling. It was not a negative feeling having it in my brain, but it was almost like, finally, that's out on paper. Do you get that with what you've written? Like, do you get this sort of cathartic release, or is it just that you're just happy that you finished?
It's a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Look what I have managed to produce, and there are multiple stages of that, because I have a pretty good process I've built that works for me. Where it's concept, rough treatment, rough outlines, and then I write a detailed outline for each chapter. Then I write the chapter, and I mean write longhand, in a notebook. So I'll put together, and the book gets done that way. And when I finish that last, handwritten chapter, and I write, end of book, that's a sense of accomplishment. I get, you take a breath, and then I prop it up on the desk, fire up the laptop, and start typing. And I do, a couple of rounds of, I type it up and edit it. I do a couple of rounds of edits before anyone ever sees it. And then I fix all the typos that I missed.
Yeah.
when my beta readers look at it and find all the weird crap that I missed across hundreds of pages.
Yeah, you can read the same bit 30 times, and then they'll come along and point out that you've used the same word 19 times, you didn't see it once. Happens
Exactly.
to me all the time. Do you do all of your own editing, or do you send it off to someone, or do you, how do you get about with that?
I do most of it myself, because I'm pretty good at that sort of thing as well. I'm it's part of why I start out writing longhand, and then I type it up. I get a better end product, because when I go back, like, obviously it's mine. Obviously I recognize my own writing and I remember writing it, but the mechanics are different. So I have a critical eye, and I look at it and I think, why did I put this sentence on the page this way? This is very ugly. So I clean it up, and I'm able to do a lot of that. And I catch between that and what software is capable of these days, not even AI just per se, just Word with its grammar and spelling tips,
Yeah.
the stuff that's been around for years now. That catches most of it. I always reach out for beta readers. I have a large pool of friends and acquaintances who I know are also fans of the work. So it's kind of win-win. They get to
Yeah.
read it before anyone else does, for free.
Yeah.
And they tend to be detail-oriented people. So they'll come back with, and really what I ask them for is just let me know if it holds together. But they're so cool. They'll be like, and they love being right about things. So they'll say, oh, which I love about them.
Yeah.
If any of them are listening to this, I love you all for doing this, and I've nothing but huge appreciation for doing it. And I love that you take the time to point out those things to me before I think I'm good and hit publish.
Like I did with my book.
On the project.
Yeah. I got too excited and just went hell for leather. Do you find it hard to listen to criticism on your book, even when it's creative?
That runs much deeper than just my books. But when I was younger, it would have been harder. Now I'm in a more accepting place and have more perspective on everything. So I'm not, if someone has good criticism, and frankly, that's part of why I put it out to these people that I trust, they're gonna let me know if something is bad and needs to be fixed. But part of that also is kind of knowing what not to listen to.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And what advice not to take, because we all have opinions. I certainly have opinions about a broad range of media that I've consumed over the years, but those are just like my opinions, man. So I tend, if unsolicited, I try not to offer it. And if someone offers a critique of something, if it's valid critique and it comes from the right place, then I want to hear it, because I want my work to be good. But if it's somebody saying, "Oh, maybe you should take the story in this direction instead," I'm less
That's not
unless
what you're
they come
after.
right, unless they have a 20-page PowerPoint presentation for why, and it makes sense. I'm going to be largely disinclined to do anything with that other than thank them for having put the thought into it, because even then it's nice that somebody thought deeply about something that I wrote.
Yeah, the thing is, that's our job, as in we've come up with it so far. It's nice that someone can say, oh, it'd be great if this happened, and I will always listen to that. But it's like, no, that's my job, that's the bit I do. You can tell me if something didn't work for you and so on, but for me it's like, that's a little bit too far. Not in a negative way. It's just like, I've already got ideas. Even if I haven't got ideas, it's like, I'll take that on board, but don't take it offensively if none of that happens.
Right.
My brother tends to read my work, and I love him to bits. He's one of my best friends, but he has this innate problem with, I don't write like him, so he wants me to write like him. Do you know what I mean? So he'll say, hey, the structure of this sentence isn't quite right, and I'm like, well, it is right, but it's not the way you write. And so we'll often have debates about that, so as you say, it's where you get your information from, and how it's given to you, because I still find it a little bit painful when you get a bit of negativity, but it's all part of the process, and it definitely is something that over time you do get better with. I know that we're going to get a lot of people who are going to be asking if they can be your beta reader, or not just where the books can come from, because we will talk about that, even though I have brushed over it. But will you be wanting others to get in touch and offer that sort of thing, or are you happy with the group that you've got, and then you'll reach out when you're ready, kind of thing?
I would say to those folks, watch my socials, my threads especially, because that's where I'm most active on threads. Watch that space if you're interested, if you've read, and I would also say, if you're if you want to be a beta reader, read the first novel in the Titan Run trilogy is a free ebook, and it's on every platform. It's free in the U.S. stores. I know on Amazon, some of the international stores, they have not changed it to free for me, and I don't want to push my luck asking them for that, but Kobo, Smashwords, all the other players, Apple, I think it's also able to be downloaded for free. So multiple places. And frankly, if you're that interested in reading it and you only use Kindle and you want it somewhere else, you can message me on Threads, and I'll get you a copy, an ebook copy of Breaking Orbit, the first book of the Titan Run trilogy, because I want people to have that for free.
Yeah.
It is, in ebook format. You can buy the paper book if you want to, but that you have to buy.
Yeah.
Read that at least. Read some of my other stuff if you want to be a beta reader, so that you understand what it is you're reading, especially now, since I'm in the middle of an ongoing series.
Yeah.
But and I will reach out. I'll put out a call over Threads, like, hey, who wants to beta read? I'm getting ready, because this one will probably be ready for beta readers early in the new year, is my plan. I'll probably have it ready, formatted up and ready for beta reading come January, if not sooner. I'd say between November and January, I plan to have the drafting all done.
All of the, as I say, all of the links to all of this, including your threads, will be down in whatever the description box, wherever this is, and you're listening to it or watching it right now. We'll make sure we got it all. We'll have all of our stuff there, and in the future, when we have other people, it will all be there as well. So, we've touched on loads of different things, and we've gone through a load of stuff. What is next for you?
So the work continues on the retrograde cycle. I hadn't even named the current series I'm working on earlier. So the retrograde cycle, the 9-part series, that continues. Part 2 just came out in September of 25. Part 3 is going to come out in May of 2026. And every 6 months for the next couple of years until we get through is what comes next for me. And as I think we're wrapping things up here, I want to say that everything that I write in this universe, part of why I chose to stay in this universe, it's a look at humanity in the future the way I think we can be if we all start behaving decently to each other. It is, I've mentioned more than once, my inspiration of Star Trek, my early inspiration. Well, that continues because, Gene Roddenberry's overarching vision of humanity figuring our crap out and deciding to get along.
Yeah.
I liked that, and I've borrowed that for this. So if that's what you like, if you like seeing people be mostly decent to each other, humanity, there's no undercurrent of humanity really fighting each other anymore for things like resources or over religion, things like that. If you like seeing, that hopeful future where we have expanded out into our solar system and is more or less believable technology in the future, there's a few things I hit with. If that's the kind of stuff you like, then check out these books, and I'm going to keep writing them until someone insists that I stop.
No,
James,
awesome.
thank you for letting me go first in our wonderful experiment together. This has been a lot of fun, and not just because I got to run my mouth about my books, and I know that next time we're gonna flip the table around.
Do you know what? I am so glad you went first with the answering the questions, because the small amount of chatting we've had, I have been so excited to ask you about certain questions, and I knew I couldn't because it wouldn't be fresh and beautiful for the podcast. And I'll just let the listeners know now. Me and you haven't known each other very long, but we instantly clicked and became friends. But we forced ourselves not to ask about too much because we wanted it to be real when we spoke on the podcast. We didn't want to rehearse a script. We wanted it to just flow or not flow. We were worried we were going to be tongue-tied and not be able to do it, but it flowed exactly how we wanted to. And the idea is just to have two friends chatting about what they love, which is writing and reading, and then having people on to do the same. And this is something, as you just said, the next time you're going to be asking me about the stuff I've done and putting me in the hot seat and seeing if I seize up or not, if I can get through it. But after that, we are reaching out to authors everywhere. Not huge authors or small authors or anything in between. It's everyone. Anyone who wants to talk about what they do. We're going to be reaching out and seeing if you guys want to join us and, just have a chat. It's completely a friendly chit chat, and it's a place where you can big yourself up for your work, because it's hard work. It's really hard work, and quite often
and it can be lonely work.
I was just going to say solitary. You're on your own, and you're the only one who can big yourself up at times. Come onto this show, we'll have a chat, and we'll big you up for you, you know? And that's it. You know, this is what we have created and why we've created it. And I think, honestly, it's going to be a fun, enjoyable project, you know? But yeah, talking about myself is going to be either brilliant or terrifying. I'm not sure which yet.
It's always a little bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for, you know, bearing your soul to everyone. And if you could give one thing to the audience now, if you could say one thing to those out there that are at this present moment wanting to start writing but don't think they're good enough, or don't think they'll be able to, or all the things that we always think about ourselves before we start writing, what would you say to them to sort of help them?
Get your first draft down, because everyone's first draft is awful.
100%.
So you're write your first draft. Don't, following on that advice, don't show that to anyone. If you still think it's good, write a second draft, or shove it in a drawer and go to your next idea and write that. Just do the thing.
Just
you know,
writing.
Nothing bad will happen, only good will happen.
100%. Perfect. Thank you so much, my friend. I will see you next week for another chat.
Okay, so if you were listening to one of our future episodes, this is where, James, you and I would be having our discussion about the discussion we just had, our follow-up for our final thoughts on it. It's been a few weeks now since we recorded those first two episodes, and for everybody listening also, this is going to be the same audio in both episodes. Feel free to listen through the whole way to the end both times if you want to. But now that it's been a couple of weeks, how do you feel about being the interviewer, about getting interviewed? What do you think?
I enjoyed being both the interviewer and the interviewee. It was nice to get my stuff out there and let the world sort of hear about all my babies and all my dreams and all my things. And I enjoyed both sides of it, to be honest. I genuinely did. I enjoyed being the question asker and the question sayer kind of thing, you know. It was nice, and it was also nice to discuss with a fellow author my books, because it's very different than speaking to family members or, you know, even beta readers. It's nice to just have there's no expectations. It's just us two chatting about our books, and I like that. So, like, did you find it similar? What did you take away from the asking and the telling kind of thing?
Yeah, I enjoyed both parts of it, though, as you were, I think, intimating a little bit, there's definitely a little power differential. When you are the interviewer, you hold the questions in your hand. So, and that's something that I think we're both very aware of, like you just said. And having interviewed each other first, we felt how it feels to be on both sides of the
I think
microphone.
that was important as well.
Yeah. So I think we're going to be very, very responsible and very empathetic with folks. I'm looking forward to having people on, authors, to talk to them about their stuff, giving them that platform to get out there.
I'm genuinely really interested in finding out about people. That's like I think we made very clear in my one. I love meeting new people. I love chatting to them. I love finding out what they're doing. So I'm genuinely excited to give people that sort of place to talk about it, and so we can interact and just enjoy it as well.
Definitely, yeah. And you know, somewhat selfishly, I have a list of authors that I've read in the last year or two that I'm really hoping when we reach out, they sign up. But I may even reach out to them and say, hey,
do it.
Would you like to come on? Yeah, because, you know, again, selfishly, I would love to pick their brains some and also give them this platform so that as we grow and people go back into our back catalog to see the first authors that we interviewed, and frankly, even if they liked it, have them back down the road. You got a new, you know, say, hey, we had you on a year ago. You've got a new book coming out. Let's talk about it.
Well, it's funny you say that it's like from a new sort of space, but any questions and answers we ask, that helps others as well in a knock-on effect, because there'll be many people wanting to know the exact same things we do for the exact same reasons, you know. So I think it's really important to get every like genre, every stage, you know. So if someone's just starting out on their journey, or if someone's coming to the end of it, they've got like millions of books out, you know, whatever. I think it's going to be so interesting just to see from their point of views, and you know, pick their brains and find out where they started and all that sort of kind of fun stuff. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, and maybe we even have on, because we in your interview, the interview of you, we mentioned how even if you've just begun the process, you're still a writer, you're still an author.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we even reach out, because I know there are people that I talk to online, that I see online, who are still in that early process. They're not even as far along as you are with your books. Certainly not where I am with my publishing hobby / career. So yeah. But I think it'd be very good for them and everyone else to hear from them at the start of the process. If this is as much about getting the word out as it is about the process. It's that, you know, someone who's thinking about publishing in the future is going to talk to this person, hear this person talk, and say, "Oh, I could do it."
Yeah. The thing is, as well, it's about lifting people up. You being a writer is a very solitary thing sometimes, so it's nice to be able to lift someone up and say, "You're not alone. You're part of this community." And then everyone else can hear from that, and that in turn will hopefully have a domino effect going down to these people who are deciding whether they think it's for them or not. And they go, well, do you know what? The way they spoke about it, that's how I feel. I was scared, but now I've heard that, I'm going to pursue it. Because that would be absolutely incredible to one day have someone on and they said, well, actually, it was something that was said in your podcast that made me push myself to that final step, you know, where I started writing and taking it like seriously. That would,
Isn't that the dream?
I'd love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
That would be incredible. That would be the sort of thing where, you know, all of the editing and the late nights and all that other stuff, that would be like, okay, that was worth it. Yeah, I'm glad, you know, we did well, you know?
Definitely.
So I look forward to that moment.
We have a great thing in the start here. And
I agree.
I'm looking forward, and I want to invite everybody listening to come back for the next episode. Whether you're listening to the end of the first episode where we talked about my books, or you're listening to this at the end of our second episode where, James, we talked about your books, come back for that next episode. We're going to have, regardless, we're going to have a great author on to have another conversation with, whether that's you or whoever the next person is, that we're not going to announce just yet. It's a big secret.
Hush,
and hush, hush. Yes. So, and I want to thank everybody for giving us a shot, and hope we were engaging.
Yeah. If you are interested at any point, and at any point of your journey, whether you're just starting out or whether you're very, you know, established as an author, if you'd like to be on the podcast, if you pop over to jamesheat.co.uk/podcast, all the information's there on how to sign up, and we genuinely look forward to speaking to you and, you know, picking your brains, probably.
Definitely. And I also want to say, we have to say this, I think it's contractually obligated by the universe, if you have a podcast or a video channel of any kind, to ask everybody, you know what's coming, leave us a review and throw 5 stars our way if you liked what you heard. And I think even more importantly, as important as the algorithm is, tell your friends to check us out. And let us know also what you thought on social media. We're out there and would love to hear from you. So thanks, everybody.
Bye from us, my friends.